Hey everyone, it's Raj. Welcome back to Youth RS, the podcast where we discuss all things youth. Today's episode is going to be about the impact of teens' involvement in community service. And we are going to have our special guest, Mr. Bryan Goehring. And now, Mr. Goehring has been a teacher in Montgomery County Public Schools for a little over 30 years now. And in that time, he made a profound impact on his students, winning the Montgomery County Teacher of the Year Award in 2009. And in addition to being an amazing science teacher, he was also the sponsor of the school club Difference Makers, which was a community service learning club where students could gain volunteer experience through projects that help groups throughout the school community, such as hospitals, charities, other students, and more. And he's also worked in youth sports since 1997, coaching football, soccer, and even the Special Olympics. And now, Mr. Goehring is also my personal inspiration for getting involved in volunteer work and community service. And it's fitting that he is the special guest for an episode centered around youth involvement in community service. And so, with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and let's get right into it. Hey everyone, it's your host Roger Wesley. Welcome back to Youth Are Us. I'm here with Mr. Goehring now.
Hello, yep, that's me,
Yeah.
Mr. Goehring.
Oh,
Sorry about that. All right. Sorry about that.
we're fine. Anyways, I mean, it's been before we get started. It's been a couple years since we last talked. So I mean, what are you working on these days?
So first of all, you look a lot different than I remember 2 years ago. I remember you as a little seventh grader. Yeah, right now I'm a job coach for adults with intellectual disabilities. So I kind of left the classroom and started to kind of doing something a little bit different, which is kind of fun. But it's always great to see former students do amazing things, and so I'm looking forward to being engaged in your new project.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so how are you? How do I say this? How are you liking the switch from the classroom to?
So yeah, going from the classroom to being a job coach it's kind of a big transition. I'm working one-on-one with people. I really miss the students, the interaction with kids, getting kids involved in the community. There's a different enthusiasm and when you're in the classroom. Kids are. I was blessed with lots of kids who are very motivated to be successful and to be involved. So being a job coach, it's kind of it's exciting to try to get folks that are not normally employable, help them get jobs with different agencies. So I like it, but I do miss the classroom a great deal.
Mm-hmm. And when you were, I guess, did you envision yourself making such a big impact, with your over 30 years of teaching in the classroom?
So no, actually, no. I mean, I don't know if people know my story, but I was going to stop teaching after my second year of teaching because
Really?
it was a hard job. It was very difficult, and so I was ready to call it quits. But I tried to. We had one of my students was watching my son. His mom was watching my son, and so the last week of school of my second year, I went over there to pick up my son, and we were going to have some dinner there, and kind of close out the school year. And during that dinner, I was telling the student's mom that I'm going to stop teaching at the end of this year. I'm going to go into business and be a manager at actually it was at a cafe. I was going to manage a cafe, and the student whose name was Alvin Singh came to me, and we were at the dinner table, and he looked at me and said, "You can't, Mr. Goehring. You can't do that." I said, "Yeah, that's just too hard of a job." And he said, "You can't." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're the best teacher I ever had." And at that moment, it made it all worth it, because a lot of teachers don't see the fruit of what you don't see the fruits of your labor ever sometimes. And so sometimes you try to figure out if it's worth it or not. And that at that moment, that changed my whole trajectory. And it kept me in the classroom. So after 34 years, I had a very blessed career.
Wow.
Yep. It was very touching. It was a very exciting, my career has been very exciting. Yeah.
Did you expect to be a teacher for so long? When you were not necessarily when you were looking for careers, but more like when you were a kid? Like what was kind of your
So that's a great question. When I was a kid, of course, I wanted to be a football player.
yeah.
So I played all sports. But my mom was a nurse, so really my direction was I was going to be a nurse. And my grandfather said he would disown me if I became a nurse. He said I will not
Oh.
have a male nurse in this family. That's the way my grandfather was. But I still want. My mom was amazing, and when I first was looking at school and colleges, I said, well, I'm going to go into mental health and become
Hmm.
a what we call a recreational therapist. So someone working with folks with disabilities, but help them, do recreational activities. And as I was pursuing that, I decided, well, but I like medicine, so I wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So in college, my first few years, my direction was to med school. I was going to go become a doctor, but I didn't have the money. So when I finished biology degree, I decided, well, I'll go to the military and get my medical training through the military. But then I couldn't get in because my eyesight's very bad. I couldn't see. So they decided, no, you can't do that. And so I said, well, what can I do? I could teach. I figured,
Hmm.
okay, I'll become a teacher. And that's when I pursued a degree in secondary education to become a middle school teacher. So initially, I didn't intend to be a teacher, but those are the kind of cards that were dealt to me, and
Hmm.
there's no regrets at all of my career. I've just been very blessed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you did a lot of work like while being a teacher as well, like especially helping your students with projects they wanted to carry out, like difference makers. So what oh were you like involved in these like service activities before helping your students with them?
Yeah, so I think it always comes back to my mom a little bit.
Hmm.
My mom was a nurse she worked with adults with severe, profound handicaps. And so she was always doing some service with those who were disadvantaged. I had a neighbor when I was growing up who had muscular dystrophy. His name was Russell. And he was always left out of all activities. And so I made it a point of mine to help him get involved in playing hide and seek. So I'd have to physically carry him because he was wheelchair bound. So when we played hide and seek at night, him and I were always partners. And, so at that point, I think I was probably maybe seventh grade, maybe, eighth grade, maybe. And so I always saw a need to serve others, to help others who are disadvantaged, that don't have the same opportunities. And I've always had that belief. So when I got to high school, I became part of a group called Interact Club, and we did service activities out in the community. So that's really where I got started. We did stuff with Special Olympics and the elderly, and embassies, and disadvantaged youth. So a lot of those things. So I kind of started in high school. I did a little bit in college. When I was in college, there was a couple service groups that I worked with in college. But I always thought that given the opportunity, everyone would like to give back or help
Yeah.
others. And so that's kind of what inspired me when I started teaching. I said, well, why don't I help start a service club? And so kids can have the opportunity, because we give them opportunities, most of them are going to take advantage of that. At the time when I first started the first one in 1990-ish, maybe one or two, I think. There was no required SSL for students, so students had to do it because
They
they
wanted
wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But we had a good program. It was called Junior Civitan at the time, so we worked with Civitan International to start this program. And but that's kind of where I started back in 1991-ish, I think. It was the first really youth service program that I started at or helped sponsored at a middle school.
Wow. Well, that's
That was a long time ago. I
yeah.
know.
No, it's just cool to see how like all the dots connected, leading from like your passion, I guess I could say, from an early age for helping others, and then connecting that over your career to helping your students help others, which is that's just cool to hear and see.
Yeah, I'm very blessed. It's just a great journey. I mean, I considered it a journey of life. And, I get see a lot of kids say, well, thank you, Mr. Gang. Thank you. I actually owe them a lot of gratitude because, it's the kids that inspire me to keep doing those things. If I didn't see kids enthusiastically helping other kids, would I continue to do it? Probably not, because the return, I get more out of the experience than I think most of the kids do. In that, just to see them, helping other people, and most of them enthusiastically, it's just a different experience. So I think I reap the greatest reward personally.
Um, yeah, that's great to hear. So you talked a bit about Junior Civitan, and then I know a lot about difference makers now, but could you like kind of explain how those started, I guess, because I know those were student led ideas.
Right. So Junior Civitan actually is a international organization
Oh,
that
okay.
focuses on youth service. And so I was with them from 1993 ish up to about 2004. But the what happened in 2004 is that we were always dictated on what projects we had to do because Junior Civitan, they had a structure in place that they wanted all the groups to follow. We could do some of our own projects, but most of the projects were really organized organized by Civitan International. And so a group of kids came to me in 2004 and said, "Hey, Mr. Goehring," or actually 2000, yeah, 4 or 5, came to me and said, "Mr. Goehring, we want to do our own thing." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, we want to be able to run our own convention. We want to be able to do our own projects, raise our own money, sponsor our own events." And so they said, can we start a nonprofit? So for a year or so, we looked at nonprofits. How do we do this? And so me and that group of kids met with a couple business leaders, and they said, "Well, this is how you do it." And so we put all our paperwork in and became officially difference makers in 2008, 2009 as a nonprofit organization. So it was really it was the kids' desire to have something special, something unique of their own, and that's kind of how Difference Makers started.
Wow, yeah. Were there any like special projects that like were your favorite, I guess? Or do you have like fond memories of specific work that you did with those students?
Well, so my first group, I think the culminating activity of every year was always convention.
Yeah.
So we do lots of projects, 30 or 40 a year, but it was always the convention that was a chance for the kids to really show the skills that they have to be leaders, to run things. And so the first convention we had was in Annapolis. So we didn't go away to a camp or anything. We went to Annapolis, and we actually met with, some politicians, some congressional leaders down in Annapolis for a few hours. So the kids got to hear about how bills are passed at the state level. But the kids organized the entire thing. So I said, "Hey, we're going to go to Annapolis." They organized everything. They found lodging for us. They met with people who ran the venues to organize that. They scheduled all their events. They decided how to do elections for new officers. We've had to tweak that a few times, but they got their guest speakers. Our first guest speaker happened to be Jamie Raskin, was the first guest speaker at our first convention. So that is probably, although I love Special Olympics and we were very intimately involved with Special Olympics, I would say the convention was the culminating activity of every year, which was great.
And have you seen like the students did a lot of work. You said 30 to 40 projects per year. So I feel like that's going to also have a very visible impact on like the community, especially in the school and like oops, nearby neighborhoods. So what kind of impact did you notice like over time from like as a result of the students doing all this work?
Yeah, so some of the things were like Special Olympics is something we were always intimately involved with. So I would get a call every year from Special Olympics saying, "Can difference makers do this? Can difference makers do that?" They were looking for an organization that was reliable and responsible, and it always felt good that they would lean on difference makers to that because they knew that we'd come through, the kids would come through, and that we'd make a difference in whatever they needed. The city of Tacoma Park, I still get calls, although I've been retired for a couple of years now. I still get calls from the city of Tacoma Park we have a program called Snow Angels. We did lawn care. We did leaf raking, all for the elderly in that community and disabled. And I still get calls saying, "Hey, is Difference Makers able to come and shovel my walk this week?" And so I see the impact we made in the community there. And then probably the biggest thing is that we ran a food pantry that started. We were feeding 30 families, and then a pandemic called COVID hit. And when everyone needed food, people were losing their jobs, and people were, you just had no resources.
Yeah.
And so we went from like feeding 30 families to feeding 300. And that's when the city of Tacoma, all the PTAs got together with difference makers and said, how are we going to manage? How can we help all of these families that need support? And so it was really cool to see them all to come together. And from that arose a pantry called Tommy's Pantry that now services 300 people biweekly. That was that was a little thing that was started at Difference Makers that rose and became its own nonprofit called Tommy's Pantry. So I think that's an amazing thing to see. What a like a mustard seed has grown into a gigantic tree, which is kind of very cool.
That is, yeah. That's amazing. Were there any projects, I guess, that you wish you could have done that like couldn't? Yeah, well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always projects that you want to see get better.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. For instance, we used to do projects with like the C&O Canal cleanup. I wish we could have done more with that. To help. With the environmental issues, I think we could have been more involved with environmental issues on a regular basis because there's a lot of need out there. When we first started, we used to do a lot of like Race for the Cure. We used to participate in a lot of those things, which I wish we had continued with. I think what happened was we got so big, had so many projects on our plate that some of the projects that kind of were foundational to us when we first started kind of disappeared. That I always go back and say, I wish I was still working with them. Because there were projects people were depending on us to serve, and we did a great job, and I think the kids loved it. But those things I wish we had continued a little bit more with. Maybe hopefully in the near future, difference makers can start doing those things again.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that's really great. It's great to see the impact that Difference Makers has had, especially since it's more of a student-led and student-founded organization. So it's kind of like a reflection of what the kids want to do
exactly
to help their community.
Yeah.
Have you seen, like, as a teacher, have you seen a visible impact on the students, like after helping out with their community, helping out on certain projects and doing volunteer work? Have you seen like an impact over the course of their middle school, I guess, experience?
Oh, definitely, without question. I mean, I keep in contact with a lot of my former students, and of course you, Raj. And Raj, you've done amazing things since middle school, and you're always still serving. I don't know if is because of difference makers, but just putting sowing that seed into their minds that the importance of serving others. But no, I keep in contact, as I said, with a bunch of students that are still serving at the college level, are now lobbyists for environmental issues, are involved with, with Special Olympics, they still come and ask me, is there service opportunities? And they're in their 20s and 30s, is there other opportunities they can get involved with that I know about? And so I think it's incredibly valuable that they've had that experience, right? They got a little taste of the importance to serve others. And, hopefully it becomes a lifelong thing like it was for me. It became I still want to do it. I still want to get out there and serve. I'm getting a little older, so it's getting a little tougher. But I still like to get out there and really help other people. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told you this, maybe last time we talked, but I did not see before like middle school, I did not see, or before I came to like one of the first difference makers meetings, I really did not see the value in like volunteer work or community service. But then it was really like you, and I have to commend you on that for being such an impact on students' lives, because you are the reason that I got involved with like all this community service work. So
that's a tremendous honor. So I appreciate that, Raj.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not unique. I mean, although you're unique, but hopefully that is true with many other students. But of course, Raj, you're kind of like the cream of the crop, right? You really, I think you had always had it inside you. It's just somebody had to give you an opportunity to actually do it. And I think that's the exciting part. That hopefully people begin to see the value of. We've become a me now kind of society instead of really looking at, well, how can I help other people be successful? So the success. A lot of people measure success by the wage they earn, right, or the degrees they earn. I hope that people are able to see success based on how much they give. How much you can give to other people to help them be successful. I hate, everything's become so competitive, that I got to be better than my neighbor. And I wish that we would all help each other become successful in whatever we desire to do. And, my goal is to help people help other people, so that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that this like pattern that you kind of notice, that introducing volunteer work to kids when they're younger, or kids, I guess, kind of leads them to be more considerate of others and helping others as they grow up, and hopefully makes them, that's kind of something I wanted to explore in this episode, where like how introducing community service to the new generation will impact them as they grow up, and then as they develop through their careers, and then keeping that same mindset or improving on that mindset. But yeah, that's kind of...
Sounds like a great research project.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see what kind of impact this may have,
And yeah, so I mean, that's kind of most of the stuff that I wanted to cover. Is there any question that you'd wish I ask you? Maybe I can ask you it.
No, there's really no. I think you've covered most questions that maybe on one of these podcasts I'll share. I don't know if you ever heard my story about Alvin Singh.
Sorry?
One of my former students.
Okay.
So the initial story was he kept me in teaching, but there's a lot more to Alvin Singh than that. So maybe someday I can come back on and tell you about the impact that one student can change the lives of so many other people. And Alvin Singh was kind of like that. You actually remind me a little bit of Alvin. Alvin was very motivated to make a difference. He was very sick. He was very sick his whole life. But he's a kid who made who changed my life, and I owe him everything, really, and his family. So so maybe someday I'll come back and that's a little lengthier story, but I think I told it at a couple end of the year banquets that we've had. But I think that's the idea, is that sow the seed, kids will make the impact if they given the opportunities. And so I think it's really cool to see what you're doing, and so many other kids that I've had the fortunate experience of teaching or serving with, and they're really doing great things out in their communities as well.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe we can get him on here and take
I wish you could. Alvin passed away, so that's part of the story. Yeah, that's part of the story, but it's all. Yeah, that was that was a tough day. That was a day that yeah, that was a tough day. When I heard, because we had always been in contact, right? And so, and it's one of those stories that it kind of hits you and says, well, it's so important to be there when people need you. And this time I wasn't there for Alvin. He had called me. I knew he was sick. He was in the hospital, and I was on my way to do something. And he had called me and left a message. He said, "Mr. Goehring, you got to call me. You got to call me." And I said, and I got the message, but I didn't call him. And so about 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a call. Of course, it's 3 in the morning. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? It's from a sister who had told me that he had passed away. And I said, well, yeah, he was calling me like 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. And she said, yeah, he wanted you to be with him when he passed on. And it was just like that moment, that just hit me so hard that he wanted me to be with him when he passed away. And so it was like, wow, he was in his 20s at the time, but it was really dramatic. So it was another part of, always remember that, it's so important to be there when people need you. And so that, again, that was another life-changing experience so I've made a point really when someone calls, I want to be there to help them, even if I don't think I can help them. And so anyways, but Alvin's a longer story than that, but that's a little bit about the story of Alvin, how one kid can really impact a life.
Mm-hmm. And so if you had to take one piece of advice or maybe like one important lesson from like your career, I guess, or your experience in life, I guess, what do you think that would be?
Well, I think, as I was saying a second ago, I think just taking the time
To be
there.
Yeah.
We all forget. We always say, "Oh, I don't have time to do that." So you have to make time to be there, for people, and I think that's probably the one of the most important things I've learned, and I still need to learn because we're always saying, "I don't have time for that," but just to be there when someone needs you. So I really try to make a point when I'm called, I want to be there to help somebody. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, thank you so much, Mr. Goehring. That's
No
about
problem.
all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
No. What's your future like? What are you pursuing?
Well, of course, I haven't really nailed everything out yet. Right now, I think I want to pursue law because, I mean, I do a lot of policy work. I realize that a big way you can help people is by changing the system, and you can't really change the system by only helping people. Helping people is great, but you can't. All the grassroots work only really works when you change how the rules work. So to change the rules of the game, you have to be involved with making legislation and law. So that's a big reason why I want to pursue law.
That's outstanding. Yeah, I can see you doing amazing things. I mean, you got all the tools that one needs, and you also have the initiative. You really are really a stellar human being, and so I think I'm excited for you. I love the new project. Hopefully this works out for you.
Hopefully.
And we'll try to make things work for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Goehring.
No problem.
And yeah, that's
I don't think I looked at the camera very often.
me neither.
It's really a conversation.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed today's episode. We definitely talked about a lot of great things, and obviously some of the lessons that Mr. Goehring gave me today will really help some of the points that he made. So yeah,
I hope so. Yep. Have a good one.
thank you all for listening. Bye bye.
Did you got good intro music? You got like some.
No.